So good morning everyone. Any questions from what we did in the last class? What did we study in the last class, वैसे? Nutrients, okay. Okay, so which all nutrients have we studied? Carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins and fats. Okay. So we were left with minerals. So minerals are micronutrients, and the important point about them is that they are inorganic. All the nutrients which we were doing till here, they were all organic. This one is inorganic. Okay, these are inorganic nutrients. We are going to categorize them as macro minerals and micro minerals. What do you think would be macro minerals? Yes? Okay, needed in large amount, but again this is now relative to this. So in minerals, within minerals we are making the comparison, and the comparison is of quantity. So that mineral which is going to be needed more, we call that macro mineral. That mineral which is going to be needed less, we call that micro mineral. Okay. Again, the important point is this is not a distinction of their importance. Equally important in whatever quantity they are needed. They have specific roles to play, and they are both going to be needed. In macro minerals, we have sodium, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium. Okay, these are your macro minerals. And in micro minerals, we have iron, fluorine, iodine, copper and zinc. Now we are going to talk about each of these, write some slight basic points about what they will be doing in your body one by one. Let's start with sodium. Let's start writing about sodium. What is the source of sodium? Salt. Yes, good. So you can write down common table salt. Common table salt. Sodium is essential for muscle movement. Sodium is essential for muscle movement and maintaining the fluid balance. Maintaining the fluid balance in the body. Maintaining the fluid balance in the body. What do we mean by fluid balance? the amount of water which is supposed to be there in the body, that is fixed. The body requires a certain amount of water which should always be there, and salts help in regulating that. So it is related with the level of salt. So if sodium is less, that balance of water or that balance of fluids in the body, that would be disturbed. Okay, so we can write that one line also. Its deficiency can cause fluid imbalance. Its deficiency can cause fluid imbalance in the body, leading to extreme weakness. Then the next one, potassium. Sources would be most fruits and vegetables. And its deficiency leads to muscle weakness. Then phosphorus. Sources would be milk, pulses, Its deficiency will lead to weaker teeth and bones. Then chlorine. What is the source of chlorine? Salt again. So salt is sodium chloride. Okay, sodium and chlorine together, that's what salt is. So the function also of chlorine would be around fluid balance only. So source, table salt, common table salt. And then you can write its deficiency will cause fluid imbalance in the body, which can lead to extreme weakness. Then sulfur. Sulfur is a part of which macronutrient? Protein. Yes, we spoke about that proteins can contain sulfur also. So that's where its deficiency will mainly reflect in the deficiency of proteins. So first you can write down the sources: onion, garlic, meat, its deficiency causes protein deficiency in the body. its deficiency causes protein deficiency in the body. Then calcium. What is the main source of calcium? Milk. Yes, good. So milk and milk products. Calcium, milk and milk products. So calcium is now important for both your muscles and bones. So you can write down. Its deficiency causes a bad muscle movement, and brittle bones. We can also write rickets. We studied about rickets. Which vitamin? Vitamin D. Yes. So that can also be written as a calcium deficiency because it is ultimately the calcium which is not being reabsorbed. Okay, so you can write that also. And the last one, magnesium. Sources, nuts, seeds, and its deficiency causes poor muscle coordination. So something like tremors or shaking, that kind of a symptom is going to be shown because the muscles are not able to operate properly in sync. They are not in sync. Okay. So let's do one question first, which we were supposed to do in the beginning of the class. Then we'll come to micronutrients. This is from the last class, from the vitamins portion, UPSC previous year's question. Give it a shot. Okay, we have one answer as D. Any different answers? That was actually really quick. You were able to read so fast. Nice. C? D. Okay, Astha also says the answer should be D. Let's read the statements. Non-function of lacrimal glands is an important symptom of deficiency of vitamin A. So lacrimal glands are your tear glands. The glands which produce tear, they are called lacrimal glands. If you want, you can note this down also. Their non-function is associated with the deficiency of vitamin A. Okay, so vitamin A, we spoke about two main places of action. One is skin and the other is eyes. So this is a very much possibility that with their deficiency, we can have the tear glands becoming non-functional. Okay, so this is correct. Second, deficiency of B1 can lead to indigestion and heart enlargement. If you remember, we did a question in the last class that was also somewhere around this. B1, thiamine deficiency, and something to do with the heart disease. Okay, heart failure, right? So what I want to point out here is that when we are practicing previous year's questions, we have to make it a point that we understand the zone in which they are asking question. Because there is a possibility, there is a chance, even if it's a small chance, that they can ask the same things around the same area. Right? Okay, question. Deficiency of vitamin B1 can lead to indigestion and heart enlargement. This is correct. And I was telling you previous year's questions say same things could be repeated. So when we are preparing them, we need to focus on the areas. Vitamin C deficiency can lead to pain in the muscles. This also is a point which was repeated in that last question also. There they had asked pain in the joints. Okay. So similar zone. Deficiency of vitamin D causes increased loss of calcium in urine. So this is also correct. We said vitamin D is needed for absorption and use of calcium in the body. So if it is not there, we will not be able to take the calcium to the bones where it's supposed to be. Even if calcium is present, it will be lost from the body. And in that loss is going to happen through the urine. So as you have said D, all four options are correct. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3 and 4, all options are correct. Answer is D. Now let's go to our micro minerals. Yes. See, most of these minerals, they can be dissolved in water and removed from the body when they are in excess, in most situations. However, if that cannot happen, or if it is beyond the level in which the kidneys also cannot eliminate them, we will have some negative effects. Like one example I can give you, sodium and chlorine, okay, sodium chloride, your basic salt, having access of that kind of affects the fluid balance in the body in a way that people can have high blood pressure. So one of the most common causes of hypertension in the body is increased salt, and that's the first change also which is recommended to anybody who has hypertension, that you start having a low salt diet, right? So excess also of everything is bad. For some of them, it's easier for them to be removed. For others, it will be more complicated. But after a certain level, they will showcase at certain in certain alterations. For most of the times, why we talk about deficiencies when it comes to vitamins and minerals is because that is a more common condition. Vitamins also we can have diseases of excess. It is called hypervitaminosis. That is also possible, but it is rare. In most cases, the common problem is deficiency. Okay. Hyper se bhi, excess se bhi, there are going to be problems. That's definitely the case, but it is usually less common. So most focus remains on talking about deficiency. Okay. Let's start with the micro minerals. First one is iron. Now we spoke about hemoglobin. Which vitamin did we associate with hemoglobin? B12. B12 cyanocobalamin, that was needed for making hemoglobin, and in the structure of hemoglobin we have iron. The structure of hemoglobin has iron in it, so that means iron's deficiency will also lead to anemia. Right? Anemia, we said, is a condition where hemoglobin is less. So this one we will call iron deficiency anemia. What was B12's anemia called? Pernicious anemia. Yes. So write down first the sources of iron. Red meats, most significant source. Red meat. Then pumpkins, apricots, and even spinach. However, if we see the absorbable amount, it is not very high in spinach or in if we if we can compare it these sources with the meat component, the absorbable amount of iron is less, right? They are sources, but it is less. And another problem which we have is the cooking mechanism. That kind of further reduce the absorbable amount. So the form in which we have spinach, that is palak paneer, right? So palak paneer or any kind of preparation which requires pressure cooking, that will lead to degradation of the amount which you are going to get from that food. So the most ideal way to get maximum benefit from fruits and vegetables in terms of vitamins and minerals is if we can eat them raw, right? So if you can eat raw spinach like Popeye did, so that would have a very high amount of iron as compared to the palak paneer. Okay, for those of you who don't know what is Popeye or who is Popeye, so maybe this is something you can check out. So Popeye is one of the first animated cartoon series of the world. So created way back in 1940s, and this is in the Second World War period. The interesting thing is that at that point of time, they needed alternate sources of nutrients because everybody has gone to war. There's no food products available, no money available. So they are finding alternatives, and also they need to have strong sturdy men to go to war. And Popeye was a sailor, right? So probably in the navy or something he was there. So he was getting all his energy from spinach, right? But he ate it raw. So that was his story. Deficiency of iron. Deficiency of iron can lead to anemia. Can lead to anemia as iron is a component of hemoglobin. Iron is a component of hemoglobin. Then we have fluorine. Sources would be drinking water. The main source is drinking water. Sorry? Fluorine. उधर देखो स्क्रीन पे. Fluorine source is water, drinking water. Fluorine helps to prevent tooth decay. So basically the integrity of your teeth, that is maintained with fluorine. The tooth decay, or which you commonly say दांत में कीड़ा लग जाना, right? That degradation of the tooth which is taking place, that can be prevented with fluorine. That's why all the toothpaste they will contain fluoride. That's how it's advertised also. If you have paid attention, they say that we have added fluorine crystals, and then they show you graphics also fluorine going into the toothpaste. So like that, if you make that observation from here, you will see that. So why that is done is to prevent the decay of teeth. So its deficiency will then cause decay of teeth, or the technical term which is dental caries. Its deficiency causes decay of tooth or dental caries. So most of your natural toothpastes which are there, right, like any of those herbal products, Miswak or something like that, they are not naturally going to be containing fluorine. Okay, if they are made from natural components like cinnamon or anything, whatever is used in that, so they do not have fluorine, right? But there are some very smart companies like Patanjali, what is the name of Patanjali's toothpaste? Okay, so you know that, right? Now this is not an endorsement or a criticism in any way, but just so that you can relate with it. So they are obviously branding every product they have as natural, right? But their toothpaste does contain fluorine. So they have added fluoride, so they have done some chemical treatment on them, taken the natural components and added fluorine also. So that in that sense, that toothpaste gets an edge against all other natural toothpaste. It doesn't stay natural because now it's chemically treated and fluorine has been added, but still, it's actually a very smart thing which they have done with their toothpaste. Okay. Next one, iodine. Dant Kanti. Sources of iodine? Salt, yes. Now how this salt is coming in here? We said our common salt is sodium chloride. Okay, this is our common salt. To this we add iodine. It's not present naturally, but we are adding iodine into this artificially in the industry, and we now call this iodized table salt. Why we need to do this is because otherwise we do not have any prominent sources of iodine, and iodine is very important. The only other source which is going to give you iodine is going to be seafood. And for most people, seafood is not a predominant part of their diet for majority of the population if you talk about India. So what we thought was what we could do is we could add iodine to our salt. Okay. So first thing you write the source, iodized table salt. Iodized table salt. Iodine, it is a component of one hormone, and that is the thyroid hormone. To make up the structure of this hormone, we need iodine. So write down, iodine is a component of the thyroid hormone, and its deficiency leads to a condition called goiter. Its deficiency leads to a condition called goiter. So because of this, and to avoid this from happening, iodized table salt is one of the very highly advertised products by the government. I'm sure you've seen those ads also which tell you to eat iodine or eat iodized table salt, and then they explain this to you also. Most of those ads are in Hindi. So goiter will be khenga. So iodine ki kami se kisi ko bhi khenga ho sakta. These are the ads if you've seen them. Okay, so what is that? That is goiter. It's basic. Yes? Okay, it basically would mean if iodine is less, that less thyroid hormone is going to be produced, which leads to this disease. The challenge with the other variety of salts which are there, like there is this surge to go towards low sodium salts or use alternate salts like rock salt or Himalayan salt or Sendha namak or any other type of salt. The challenge with that is that you will not be able to get iodine in any form in your diet, and that is problematic. So if there is any inclination towards changing the salt in your diet also, you have to make sure that at least one of your meals should have the normal iodized table salt, because otherwise you are not getting iodine from anywhere, which you will be needing. Okay. Next one, copper. Sources, pulses, pulses, nuts and seeds, pulses, nuts and seeds. It helps in the functioning of enzymes. Its deficiency can cause low white blood cell count. Its deficiency can cause low white blood cell count. Then count. The number of white blood cells, they are reduced. Zinc, sources, meat, fish, then chia seeds also. Where did we read chia seeds? Any idea? मैक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट ही बता दो, आगे का नहीं याद आ रहा तो. फाइबर. इतनी देर में तो देख के बता देना चाहिए था. फैट्स, fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Okay. It helps in the working of enzymes. And its deficiency can lead to various conditions like diarrhea and hair loss. So you might have seen this also, or you might have some idea. People with diarrhea, particularly children. So in India, we have a very large number of children dying of a very simple condition like diarrhea. So in that, the solution is actually very simple. There is a solution which is available called ORS. Oral rehydration solution. I'm sure you've come across that at some point of time. So that is the only thing which you need to give. So in diarrhea, what is happening is there is loss of nutrients and water which is taking place from your body. So you need to refill that. That's the most easiest thing which you can do. So giving ORS, along with that, if we give zinc also. So that whole treatment, when we are giving it, it is supposed to be with zinc. So that's how it's branded, particularly in areas where children are regularly facing this. So zinc, what it will do is, it will stabilize the system. It will help in bringing stability to the system so that whatever replenished fluids which you are giving, that are not being lost again. Okay. So this brings us to the end of our nutrients topic. Let's do one very basic, simple, small question, and then we'll go to the next one. Okay, I think I did not tell you the source of zinc. No, I did. What is the difference between disease and disorder, Shubham? So we are going to be talking about diseases in the next class probably. As far as to answer the question, uh, disorder would be any dysfunction or any non-function of one particular part, like disorder of the stomach, disorder of the liver, like that. Disease is basically an overall condition which can have more than 2-3 parts which are affected. Like if we say that there is a disease, then maybe we have some thing happening with the, like scurvy. If we say scurvy is a disease, because scurvy has joint pains, scurvy have muscle pains, scurvy has bleeding gums, like that. Yeah, answer. So calcium, iron, sodium, which of the minerals given above are required by the human body for contraction of muscles? Contraction of muscles just means the movement which is happening. The muscles move in a contracted movement. They contract and expand. So the term for their movement is contraction of muscles. And in this, we do not need iron. Iron's role is mainly to be a part of hemoglobin, but the other two, they can help in contraction of muscles. So we have, as you said, C, 1 and 3 only. So Shashi, Sahil, Muskan, Astha, they have also given the answer as C. Now we come to our next a little bit of core biology topic, which is the cell. So cell is now what? The basic unit of life. This is the term, but what does it mean in terms when I say it is the basic unit of life? What exactly is life, or how do we talk about that? We talk about different kinds of life processes. For life to be possible, for life to continue, every living organism is supposed to do certain things. There are certain jobs which will be done by an entity for it to be qualified as a living organism. What are those things? So we spoke about nutrition. That's the first thing which everybody will do. Take on some food. Then that food will have to be digested. Digested means broken down. Okay. Then it will have to be utilized to produce energy. Once you're breaking it down, you need energy to do all the different functions. And after you have done that, you will have some wastes, and those wastes would be needed to be removed. Also internally, inside the organism, all these things could be taking place at different places. So maybe there is one place where you are producing energy, there is another place from where you are removing the waste. So there is a need for internally a process to circulate these things, to move around these things from one part to the other. And to get this whole operation in place, you need a system of control. You need a place where all these activities could be controlled. Right? So for the basics of the activities of living organisms, this is in the most simplistic of terms. This is how life is supposed to be. And for life to continue from one generation to another, organisms would also need to reproduce. Otherwise, after one person or one organism, life will come to an end. So he needs to reproduce, he needs to have newer forms. So all these become the functions of life, the functional activities, the life processes. A cell is going to be that unit which can functionally do all these things. All the processes which are needed for life, the cell is that unit which can on its own do all these things, and The second point is it makes up the structure of all living organisms. That means from the smallest organism to the largest organism. So from the bacteria to the blue whale, everything is made up of cells. Okay, cell is that unit which makes up all living organisms. Like in your body, we can have billions and billions of cells. In the body of an amoeba, there is only one cell. But it is the cell. The basic identity is the same. It is the basic form. It's like one brick which can be kept alone, or that whole brick can be used, multiple copies of that brick can be used to make a building. That is the concept here. So we say the cell is the basic functional and structural unit of life. You can write this line. The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all known forms of life. All known forms of life. Now, based on these cells, we are going to have categorization of different types of organisms. The first classification which we will do is on the basis of number of cells. How many cells does an organism have? So we can have unicellular. Unicellular would mean only one cell. There is an organism which is complete in the sense it is doing all these functions, but its body is made up of only one cell. That means that one cell is the whole sole entity to do all these functions. Then we have multicellular. Multicellular means more than one cell. So in this, what can happen is that either all the cells will keep doing all the cells will do the basic functions which they're supposed to do, and there is also a possibility of specialization. For example, in your body, we have these overall functions being divided. Like your stomach will do your digestion process, your control of the body will be done by the brain, like that. So different types of cells, they become specialized, they do different functions, and ultimately that whole system coordinates together for the life to be possible. That would happen in the case of a multicellular organism. Okay. So first let's write down unicellular. Unicellular organism is the one which contains only a single cell, which contains only a single cell, which performs all life processes. Only a single cell which performs all life processes. Then you can write some of these examples. We don't have to go into the details of these organisms, but as examples of single cellular organisms, we should know them. So you have amoeba, euglena, paramecium, bacteria, Then multicellular organisms consist of more than one cell, consist of more than one cell, the different cells can become specialized. The different cells can become specialized for different functions. Different cells can become specialized for different functions, all of which coordinate to make life possible. All of which coordinate to make life possible. And then you can write down the examples of multicellular organisms. So we have insects, human beings, plants. Now we are going to do one more categorization of organisms, which is going to be based on its internal organization. But before we go into that, we need to know a few terms. First is genetic material. Now, every organism will pass on its information to its next generation when it reproduces. The most common idea of this is that you all might have made the observation that some of your features are like that of your father, some are like that of your mother. So, you might have your height like one parent, your hair like the other, or things like that. How that information is coming into your body, it is coming through the genetic material, which is DNA. So the genetic material or DNA holds this information, which is transferred from one generation to the next. So what will be the role of genetic material? The role then becomes to dictate the characters of an organism. It is bringing the information from the previous generation, and then in this present organism it is going to dictate, or it is going to determine how the person's body will function. Okay, so this genetic material DNA, in some viruses actually, the genetic material can be RNA also. We will study about their structures when we come to genetics, or how that whole system works. But here the only thing which you have to remember is that the main genetic material of all living organisms is DNA, with the exception of a few viruses which can also have RNA. Okay. The next point which I want to tell you is presence of something called a cell organelle. Okay, so you remember these different functions? We said that, okay, we can have the stomach, we can have lungs, kidneys, different organs to do different functions. Within the cells also we can have special areas to do these functions. That means in a particular cell, there can be one place where energy is being produced. There can be another place where things are being broken down. There can be another place where we can have some area which allows circulation or movement within the cell. So specific areas to do specialized functions are there. You can understand it with the analogy of the organs. So just like that, organs are at the level of the organism. At the level of individual cells, we have something called a cell organelle. Now we will study about the different types of cell organelle and what their functions are in detail after this. But here I am just bringing up the basic idea. When these cell organelle are present, their structures are covered with a membrane. So membrane you can understand as a covering. It's like a covering. So these structures, they have membranes. Okay. Now, based on these 2 points, we are going to develop our next classification. First, just take a look at these diagrams without going into the detail. You will be able to observe that this one, its structure is relatively simpler as compared to the second one. The prokaryotic structure, it is simple. This you can see many colors, different areas. So this is a little specialized or a little more complex than the first one. As life developed on Earth, the first organisms which came were prokaryotes. Their identifying feature is that they do not have the things which we have called cell organelle. So they have no specialized areas doing specialized functions. Anywhere in the cell, any function will take place. It will do everything. All the life functions, every organism needs to do. They need to take up nutrition, they need to digest it, they need to produce energy, they need to remove the waste. They will be doing, but they have no special areas to do that. So no organelle. In this second structure called the eukaryotes, these were the cells which developed later on. Presently in the world we have both these types of organisms, but most organisms are of this category. They have developed a specialization. These different colors which you see, these are actually the cell organelle. So they have cell organelle covered with proper membranes. This becomes a feature of the eukaryotic organism. The second point of difference would be with the genetic material. In this prokaryotic, this central thing which you can see, this is the DNA. Their DNA is present in what we can call a circular manner. So we say this is a circular DNA, and on this DNA also there is no covering or anything. It's just kept there in the cell, and the place where it is kept, that place is called nucleoid region. Okay, so DNA circular, 1 point, no cell organelle, second point. That's what you have to remember here. For the eukaryotic organisms, what is happening is that there is a special structure called nucleus. This central structure, this is the nucleus. It has a proper membrane, a proper layer covering, and inside this nucleus is the DNA. Okay. As such, the DNA cannot be seen. Like in this diagram, they have not specifically shown DNA. But when a cell divides, at that point of time, we can clearly see the shape of DNA. And that DNA is in the form of something called chromosome. So maybe you've heard this term also. The chromosomes are actually rod-like structures. So when we say rod-like, that means this will be linear. Okay. So eukaryotic organisms, DNA is linear. Prokaryotic, DNA is circular. Here, no membrane, no covering, no nucleus. In eukaryotes, a nucleus, a proper membrane, and inside that you have chromosomes. Prokaryotes do not have any other cell organelle also. Eukaryotes will have other cell organelle. So shape of DNA and presence or absence of cell organelle. The two basic differences between eukaryotic and prokaryotic organisms. Okay. We will write this down. First we'll write down about prokaryotes. Okay, so Sugam has asked a question which says that how are transgenders born? Okay, so I want to tell you that we will study about a great deal about inheritance and chromosomes and DNA and how the transmission is taking place, but they are actually relating it to they contain genetic material of the parents, and parents are not transgenders in that sense. So these terms need a little bit more clarity, which even if I tell you, it will be very technical, that how and why it is happening. So at this stage, I don't think I can give you an answer. This is a little bit complex. So maybe you have to wait for 2-3 classes. By the time we come to genetics, you will be in a better position to understand this and why it is happening. Right? Let's talk about cells here. Prokaryotic organisms will always be unicellular. Okay, that is a fixed condition. Eukaryotes mein we have both unicellular and multicellular organisms. But this one, because it is exceptionally simple in its structure, so having multicellular connections is not possible for a prokaryotic organism. Okay. So write down. Prokaryotes are unicellular organisms. They are unicellular organisms which lack a membrane bound nucleus and cell organelle. A membrane bound nucleus and cell organelle. The genetic material is in the form of circular DNA present in the nucleoid region. We can write down examples here now. One and the most common example is bacteria. And one more example is cyanobacteria. bacteria and cyanobacteria. Then eukaryotes, they can be unicellular, or multicellular organisms. They can be unicellular or multicellular organisms which have a membrane bound nucleus, and cell organelle. The genetic material is linear. And is organized in the form of rod-like structures called chromosomes. Rod-like structures called chromosomes. And then in the example, you can write down plants, animals, the left out examples from unicellular like amoeba, paramecium, euglena, all of them will fit in eukaryotic category. Okay. Now one organism which we have left from this categorization is the virus. Okay. So if you made that observation, virus has not come in or will not come in anywhere. Unicellular, multicellular, eukaryotic, prokaryotic, it doesn't fit into any category. Why is that happening is because the condition of virus is unique. So it is somewhere between the living and the non-living world. We do not exactly put it in living things or in non-living things. Its status is somewhere in between. How is that happening? This is the structure of the virus. Okay, the virus has its genetic material, which can be, as I have told you, DNA or RNA. Virus has its genetic material, DNA or RNA, any of it. It has its specific, its own unique protein coat. Okay, so you might have seen the structure of coronavirus, its images, they come in, its structure is something like this. Does this make some sense? Something like this? Yes, no? Okay. No. So this actually is the protein coat only, these protein coat which is there. But the term coronavirus actually means that it is like a crown. So this is somewhere protruding out in that sense. Okay, the same basic idea is the same, that you have protein, you have genetic material. But there is something which is missing. They lack enzymes. On their own, they do not have enzymes, like enzymes which will help them in performing different activities, or enzymes which will be needed for producing energy. So because these enzymes are missing, virus in itself cannot do any of the life processes. So on its own, if you have a virus which is placed, it is as good as a non-living thing. It is not doing any of the functions of life which we spoke about. Nutrition, digestion, all of that. It will not do anything. It's just lying there as an entity. How it starts its life processes is when it goes into another living organism. If it goes into the body of a plant or an animal or any other living organism, then what it does is it starts using their enzymes. It doesn't have its own enzyme, but it can use the enzymes of other organisms. Okay, and with that it will start its life. Then it will start taking food, then it will start producing energy, then it will start multiplying, producing more viruses. But it will need a living medium. If you have to grow a virus, right? If we have to grow a virus in the lab, we can grow a virus in the lab, but the medium cannot be an artificial medium. Artificial medium, say I mean that we just put in some chemicals, right? We put in say glucose, we can grow bacteria on that. Because bacteria ka apna system complete. Bacteria has everything, right? Or if I want to grow a plant cell, I can grow it in that medium. If I want to grow a fungus cell, I can grow it. But I will not be able to grow a bacteria because in an artificial medium, bacteria will not grow. It will grow only with some living component. So we have to either give him enzymes or we have to give it some cells, something like that we will have to give, only then the virus will be able to grow. So its mechanism, its activity, its life starts after infection. And because it is of a very, very extremely small size, it can infect even the smallest of cells like bacteria. Plants, animals, fungus, bacteria, everything can be infected by viruses. And why are they wanting to do this? Is because they lack enzymes and they cannot perform the functions of life on their own. And because of that, they are not categorized with any other organism. They are a separate category of it on its own because they do not come into any zone. Okay, let's just write this down. Yeah. Okay, so when we talk about DNA and RNA, there we will talk about the idea how the functioning is actually taking place. So in the most simple terms, what I can tell you is, she has asked that how does the virus change its form? Okay, that's the question she has asked. What happens is that when virus is reproducing, or you can say when virus is making that copy of itself, so at that point an exact copy is not made. The change in this genetic material, when it is being copied, there is some error in that. It's not a perfect copy, and with that error which is there, that will lead to change in the organism, because ultimately it is your genetic material which is going to be controlling all your features. And if the genetic material itself changes, then that will mean that the characters of a person will change. That's how the virus is changing. So whenever you are reading about any virus, we'll talk about this again when we come to diseases, you have to first identify this part only. Is it a DNA virus? Is it an RNA virus? So RNA viruses today, of course, you have all your coronaviruses. Okay, most common example which we are dealing with. Then you can have an example of a dengue virus here. In DNA we have adenoviruses, most common example here, or most abundantly actually found otherwise also, or for diseased virus, you can have chickenpox virus, which is a DNA virus. So DNA is actually this making copies process or replication process. The DNA, like it's there in our body also, that mechanism is a little secure. RNA replication or RNA ka duplication, that is an easier process. So anything which has RNA as its genetic material, like the viruses which are based primarily on RNA, for them having an error is more easier, because there is something called proofreading which doesn't happen when replication of RNA is taking place. So because of that, the probability of an RNA virus changing is a little bit more as compared to any other living organism which is based on DNA. Okay, so that's how you can associate with this. Okay, let's write down. Yeah. As in? I do not understand what you mean by the word effectiveness. Effectiveness of virus. Okay, let me try and frame a statement. Let's see if that hits the question you are asking. So once the virus is inside a living organism, okay, suppose it is inside a plant, then its life process is going to be similar to any other cell. Okay, so it is going to produce itself, it is going to do nutrition, everything just like any other organism. ठीक है, सिर्फ एक enzyme component which was missing, that it has got, so after that it can continue its living system, right? Okay, did I answer or are you asking me something else? Okay, chalo, good. Okay, anybody else? Write down then. Viruses, yes. It still can have some cells, like the cells, even if there is a dead body, the cells will have the enzymes, right? The cells will still have some functional enzymes which they can use, right? But again, that is going to be in a limited period of time, not a very, you can say, long dead or decayed matter. In that, virus will not be found, right? Okay. So viruses contain their own genetic material. Viruses contain their own genetic material and proteins. Their own genetic material and proteins, but they lack certain enzymes. But they lack certain enzymes. They can grow and replicate. They can grow and replicate only inside the living cells, only inside the living cells of an organism. Only inside the living cells of an organism. They can infect plants, animals. They can infect plants, animals, and even microorganisms, like bacteria. Okay. So with that, let's take a break. And after we come back, we are going to talk about the different components or cell organelle which are present and their function. All right. So we are going to start with the different parts of the cell. We're going to talk about the cell in detail and we are going to see what each of the parts in the cell does and how that whole system operates. Yes. Okay, so he's asking what is the lifetime of a particular cell. So lifetime of different cells is different, right? There's no standard answer as to what is going to be the lifetime of the cell. What I can just tell you is that it is fixed and it is predetermined. There is a mechanism for identifying everything, when a cell will be born, how many times will it replicate, how many copies would be there, when does it stop multiplying and when does it die. ये सारा चीज फिक्स्ड है, but it will be different for different cells. Like for example, I'll give you red blood cells. So red blood cells have a fixed lifespan of 120 days. But that's for them. There could be other cells which would be living less or which would be living more. Most of your skin cells, the outer layer, their lifespan is somewhere around 27, 28 days. Right? In that range, less than 30 days. So in that sense, the lifespan is different, but it is determined for any particular category. It's fixed. Okay. Viruses, so as such, if they are not inside a living organism, if they're just outside, they're not growing, if they're in that dormant state, for them, there is no definite point as to when they will cease to exist. Unless and until some external action is happening, they can stay indefinitely because they are not really a living component, right? In the body, they will make some copies, but exact idea of their eventual death on their own, that is not very well understood. A lot of things about the virus is not very well understood, right? So we cannot exactly point out a figure because their life cycles inside and outside the living organisms are very different. Okay, yeah. Somebody else was also asking. That's it? Okay. So we will first talk about the outer boundary of the cell. So the outermost boundary is called the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. So the outermost layer of the cell is called cell membrane or plasma membrane. It is basically the outer covering. It is something which will give shape to the cell. It will hold the contents inside the cell in place. And it is made up of fats, special types of fats called phospholipids. So write this down. A cell membrane or plasma membrane separates the interior of all cells from the outside environment. They are made up of phospholipids. They are made up of phospholipids. There are now some cells in which, other than these cell membrane, there is one extra layer. So the plasma membrane is there, but outside that there is another protective layer called the cell wall. Now this is there only in a few organisms and not all organisms. All of them will have the cell membrane, but not all will have cell wall. We have plants, then fungi and bacteria, which are known to have cell wall. This cell wall is supposed to give them additional support and protection, and it is made up of different things in each of these cases. Plant cell wall, cellulose. What type of a category it was? Cellulose, do you remember? Polysaccharides. So it is a carbohydrate. Then you have, in fungi it is called chitin, and for bacteria we have something called peptidoglycans. So write this down. Cell wall is the structural layer surrounding the cell membrane in certain types of cells. Surrounding the cell membrane in certain types of cells for support and protection. Then you can write down what are each of the cell walls made up of. So cell walls are found in plants, fungi and bacteria, and they are made up of cellulose, chitins and peptidoglycans. Now Nandini has asked, do viruses affect different organisms differently? So why? See, we cannot really go into virology, right? That's not our topic, and you also don't need to worry about that. Keep it a little simple. We will talk about diseases, and as you read about different diseases, different viral diseases, you will see how viruses are affecting different viruses, how they are affecting differently. Like you have a polio virus, which is going to give you some movement abnormality. Okay, there's going to be something wrong with the functioning of your leg. That is the effect of polio virus. Then you have chickenpox virus, which is going to give you skin rashes. So effects can be different because of different mechanisms, but that's just for anything. Bacteria also, we have different bacteria which can go into different organisms and affect them differently. That's how we have so many variable diseases. Okay, that's the basic essence of that, right? But then again, if you think you have to go into the exact mechanism of working of every living organism or of their structure, that how is bacteria, how is cyanobacteria, what is the structure of Euglena, that's beyond the scope of this exam. So unless and until something major has happened concerning to that, it's maybe a Nobel Prize winning activity which has happened, we do not need to bother ourselves into going into that aspects, because then that becomes a research based topic, which of course you do not need. ठीक है. Next we will talk about the next component, which is the nucleus. So when we go inside the cell membrane, we say there are two parts. One is the nucleus and then we have the cytoplasm. Okay. So nucleus, we already know what the nucleus is doing. The nucleus holds our chromosomes, which is our main genetic material. And in that sense, because it has the genetic material, it becomes the controlling center. So this is like the brain. It will control whatever is happening, because we said genetic material is supposed to have the information for the different characters of a person, right? Like my genetic material is determining how I will walk, how I will talk, everything. So at the level of the cell also similar thing, how the cell will function, that is determined by the genetic material. So nucleus becomes the brain. It contains DNA in the form of chromosomes, and everything else which we have here, that is the cytoplasm. So cytoplasm then will contain all the other cell organelles. Nucleus and cytoplasm, these are the two things where we say life is actually there. So this is the zone where all the life's activities are taking place, and there is a term for this also called protoplasm, which is your nucleus and cytoplasm. So this becomes the living component where life processes are taking place. Okay, let's write about these three things, starting with the nucleus, cell nucleus. Aditya has asked that can the coronavirus affect the bacteria? So of course we do not know a lot about coronavirus. It keeps surprising us. But as far as the information which we have right now, it is mainly going to infect the animal kingdom and not bacteria. So overall, if we say, can bacteria affect or infect plants, plants, animals, bacteria, fungus, then yes. But every virus does not need to infect everything. Okay, that is also something which you should keep in mind. Viruses take their pick also. That some viruses, they say, okay, we will go and infect only the plants. The others want to live in the bacteria. Some others want to live in the animals. And in animals also, they can choose specific variety. Okay, we will grow only in chimpanzees. That kind of specification is there. But broadly, if we talk about, they have, if we talk about virus family as a whole, then yes, they can infect everybody. Okay. Write down cell nucleus. It is the controlling center. It is the controlling center of all the activities It is the controlling center of all the activities of the cell. It is generally spherical in shape. It is generally spherical in shape and is located in the center of the cell. It contains the genetic material. It contains the genetic material in the form of chromosomes. It contains the genetic material in the form of chromosomes. Then cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. It contains all the components of the cell. It contains all the components of the cell enclosed within the cell membrane, other than the nucleus. And then the third term, protoplasm. Protoplasm it is the living part of the cell which includes the nucleus and the cytoplasm. After this, we will first talk about the ribosomes. Ribosomes are small structures whose job is to produce proteins. We call this protein synthesis. Synthesis of proteins or production of proteins. So organisms need to make their own proteins, and we'll study what is the significance of these protein production, why it is needed later on when we go to genetics also. But this is happening at the ribosomes. Now these ribosomes can be present here in the cytoplasm on their own, or there are organelles called endoplasmic reticulum where they can be attached. Now what is this endoplasmic reticulum? These are like, tubes or chains. Like suppose this one, you can say here, it is connecting the nucleus with some part of the cytoplasm. Or this one here, it is connecting two parts of the cytoplasm. So the aspect of circulation which we spoke about, or transportation within the cell for different things to move from one place to the other. Like something is happening in the nucleus, so it has to go out. There will be an endoplasmic reticulum to do that. So between two organelles in some other part of the cytoplasm, some movement is needed. For that, there would be some tubes to do that job. That is what is endoplasmic reticulum. Basically, it is the transport system of tubes and sheets which will allow things to move in the cell. They can have ribosomes attached to them. Or they can be without ribosomes also. So if they have ribosomes attached to them, they are called rough endoplasmic reticulum. If they do not have ribosomes, they are called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So depending on availability of ribosomes, we can also see a variation in function. when the endoplasmic reticulum will contain the ribosomes, and we know ribosomes are going to be producing proteins, so that would mean rough endoplasmic reticulum is also involved with production of proteins in a way. And the smooth one, because it has no proteins, it is involved with fats. So if there is a question which asks you, endoplasmic reticulum is involved with protein synthesis only, then that is incorrect, because overall it can also be involved in production of fats, right? Or if you have a question to select organelles which help in protein production. So you have one option as ribosomes, one as endoplasmic reticulum, and the third one as both. So the answer again has to be both. Okay? Let's write down first ribosomes. So I guess the most intriguing topic about which everybody knows something is viruses, because that's where we are getting a lot of questions. Viruses do contain viral enzymes. For example, reverse transcriptase in case of HIV. Okay, so Farzal, I am not going to go into this discussion. We will talk about transcription and reverse transcription at the stage when we get to genetics. Okay. The second thing is, if you are getting confused with this aspect of enzymes, and if you look at your notebook, we wrote some enzymes. Okay, we are not saying all enzymes, but they are lacking some enzymes. If you want to specify, you can write down some enzymes, particularly those needed for energy production. Okay, if that will help you clear your doubt, then you can put that there. Energy production is the main function which they cannot do. Reverse transcriptase enzymes or transcription process is to do with their making more copies, or for them to produce proteins. Okay, the protein they already have, we know about that, they have their proteins, right? So those functions for those enzymes they can have, but they lack the enzymes for energy production, right? Okay. Write down ribosomes. They are the sites of protein synthesis. They are the sites of protein synthesis in the cell. They can be present freely. They can be present freely in the cytoplasm. They can be present freely in the cytoplasm, or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. Attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. Then endoplasmic reticulum, what is that? Endoplasmic reticulum is a large network of membrane-bound tubes and sheets. It is a large network of membrane-bound tubes and sheets which act as channels of transport. Which act as channels of transport. Channels of transport. Sheets. Okay. Then rough endoplasmic reticulum, you can write rough ER. They have attached ribosomes. They have attached ribosomes. And they have attached ribosomes and are involved in protein synthesis. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum. They do not contain ribosomes. They do not contain ribosomes. And are involved in production of fats. The next organelle which we have is Golgi bodies. This Golgi body, this is for packaging and taking things from inside and outside the cell. Like you are producing proteins, those proteins have to be sent outside the cell. How will they go outside is, first the Golgi bodies will pack them. There's going to be a packaging and then they will be dispatched. Similarly, when anything from outside has to come inside, for that also Golgi body does this function of packaging. Okay, write down Golgi bodies. They are membrane bound structures. They are membrane bound structures which package and dispatch material to various targets inside and outside the cells. To various targets inside and outside the cell. Now let's talk about the only thing which you ever remembered from school biology. Yes, mitochondria. Yes, powerhouse of the cell. Okay. Why it is the powerhouse of the cell is because this is the place where energy is going to be produced in the cell. Okay, energy production in the cell takes place in mitochondria. We have a technical name for that. It is cellular respiration. We will study what is cellular respiration later. Here you just need to know this is a way in which your cell is producing energy. And because this is the place where cell is producing energy, it is called the powerhouse of the cell. One special property of mitochondria is that it has its own DNA. Like you have the main DNA of the cell inside the nucleus, but other than that there is one, though it's a very, very small piece of DNA, but still it is there, and that means this organelle has its own genetic material or its own DNA. Okay, write down. Mitochondria contains its own DNA. Mitochondria contains its own DNA. It performs cellular respiration it performs cellular respiration, which leads to production of energy, making it the powerhouse of the cell. Making it the powerhouse of the cell. Then lysosome. Now this is an organelle which contains very powerful enzymes for digestion, digestive enzymes. So any foreign material which comes into the cell, or even within the cell, if there is any organelle which is not working properly and it has to be broken down, that process of breakdown or digestion, that would be done by the lysosomes. So they contains enzyme which are going to break down anything which needs to be broken down. It can be foreign material, it can be something within the cell. This can even go on to eliminate the whole cell. Suppose we have a cell which is now worn out, is not able to function, it's damaged in some way. So what the lysosomes can do is they will open up, they will release their enzymes into the cytoplasm, and as a result what will happen is this whole cell will be broken down, it will disintegrate. So because of this capacity of lysosomes, they are also called the suicide bags of the cell. Because the cell killing its own self is like committing suicide. So the cell can commit suicide with the action of lysosomes. Okay, write down. Lysosomes contain powerful digestive enzymes. Lysosomes contain powerful digestive enzymes which can digest any foreign material, as well as worn out cell organelle. They can digest the whole damaged cell. They can digest the whole damaged cell by releasing their enzymes into the cytoplasm. By releasing their enzyme into the cytoplasm. They are thus called the suicide bags of the cell. They are thus called the suicide bags of the cell. Next we have vacuoles. So vacuole is basically a place in the cell where things will be stored. So it could be fats, it could be proteins, or it could be something which the cell has broken down and it needs to be kept there. So everything that the cell wants to be stored, that will be stored in the vacuole. Now the structure of vacuole is different in plant cell and in animal cell. So this is the plant cell with the cell wall, and that is the animal cell. What we see is, in animal cells, there are small multiple vacuoles, more than one, and smaller structures which are going to be vacuoles. Now the function remains the same, but in plants what happens is, there is one large vacuole. This vacuole is so large that the nucleus, which is supposed to be in the center, that is also pushed to a side. The vacuole takes up most of the space in the plant cell, and there is one. So there is this difference: plant cell, one large vacuole; animal cell, multiple small vacuoles. Okay, why, if you have to think why is it like this? So what happens is, we have the additional cell wall here. When it comes to plant cells, we have the additional cell wall. Now this cell wall will be giving some pressure on the cell membrane. So there is a possibility that this cell membrane can collapse with the force of the cell wall. So with the vacuole present, it provides a counter force on the cell membrane so that the cell membrane can stay in place. That's why one large big vacuole. Okay? Let's write vacuoles. They are the storage structures. They are the storage structures in the cells. They are present in the form of single large structure. They are present in the form of single large structure in plant cells, single large structure in plant cell, and multiple smaller structures in animal cells. And one last organelle we will do, which is found only in plants. So there is this organelle called plastids, which is found only in plants. Okay. Its job is to hold different kinds of pigments. Pigments for giving the different parts of the plant different colors. Okay, like different colors of flowers, the leaves, that is determined by the pigments. And these pigments will be found in cell organelles called plastids. They also have their own DNA. Just like mitochondria, plastids also have their own DNA. Okay. Write this. Plastids are pigment containing cell organelle found only in plants. Pigment containing cell organelle found only in plants. They have their own DNA. And give and give different colors to different parts of the plant, and give different colors to different parts of the plant. They are of three types. First one, chloroplast. They are of three types. First one, chloroplast. Please write this. It is found in the green parts of the plant. It is found in the green parts of the plant and contain a pigment chlorophyll. Found in the green parts of the plant and contain a pigment chlorophyll. So green parts, primarily the leaves. That's where we will have chloroplasts. Then second is chromoplast. Chromoplast, found in the colored parts of the plant. Colored parts of the plant, like flowers basically. And we have another type of plastid which is called leucoplast. Leucoplast, which gives white to colorless kind of shade. White to colorless shade because of presence of stored starch, oil or proteins. Because of presence of stored starch, oil or proteins. Okay. Now with what we have done, things which you already know, if I ask you to compare the plant and animal cell, I think you should be able to do it. We already have the information. This is just going to be a summary kind of a thing. So you can keep writing the points on your own. Tell me the points of differences between animal cell and plant cell. Cell wall, okay, the first one. You also need to write this down. So here you have only cell membrane in the case of an animal cell, and here you have a cell wall. So we can see the cell wall. Then what else? Vacuole. Okay. So here you can see one large vacuole, single large vacuole, and multiple small vacuoles. Cell wall, vacuoles, and Vipin is saying plastids. So that can be the next point. Animal cell, no plastids. Plant cell, we have plastids. So they have shown a chloroplast here, green colored. What else? Shape. Okay, yes, that also you can say, but again not a very definitive thing because different cells can have different shapes also. Number of mitochondria. Again, not a very important point. They both have mitochondria, not a very distinguishing feature. Think of the position of the nucleus. In the animal cell, the nucleus will be central in position. But in the plant cell, the nucleus becomes peripheral because of the large vacuole. And one last point which we can mention in terms of storage in cells, plant cells have starch, animal cells have glycogen. The storage product is different. Kokila has said DNA. No, DNA as such, there is no difference. They also have chromosomes. Plant cells also, animal cells also will have chromosomes. Position of nucleus. Okay. So this is the basic point of categorization between plants and animal cells. And exactly on this, we have one question which we will see here, which was asked in 2020. Okay, we have one answer as C. See, sometimes, you know, when we are reading something or study something, so there's this natural doubt which comes कि ये तो नहीं पूछ सकते, right? This is one thing which happened with so many people, like you're teaching in detail plant cell, animal cell, and then they have this surety कि नहीं ये तो पूछ ही नहीं सकते, this they'll not have. There's so many important things happening, but then you never know that to which point of basics they can take you to. C. D. C. Okay. So we have C from our online students also. Garima, Vipin, Pinky. Okay. Which of the following statements are correct regarding the general difference between plants and animal cell? So plant cells have cellulose cell walls whilst animal cells do not. Is this correct? Yes, this is correct. Now see, analyze the question also. Not only have they asked if they have cell wall, they've also asked what the cell wall is made up of, right? So that is the level which they want you to be at. Second point, plant cells do not have plasma membrane, unlike animal cells which do. What about this? This will be incorrect. Plant cells can have a cell wall, but that does not mean that they do not have the cell membrane or plasma membrane. So this is incorrect. Now we want 1 to be in our answer and we don't want 2 to be in our answer. So that straight away brings us to the answer without reading the third statement, which is C, 1 and 3 only. The third statement says mature plant cell has one large vacuole whilst animal cell has many small vacuoles. Okay, so this statement is also correct. They've just put in this word mature, so just to make you rethink कि पता नहीं mature का कुछ और significance तो नहीं है, but कुछ भी नहीं है. It just means a fully developed plant cell, that's it. And the basic idea stays with that. But even if this is something which might have confused you or anything like that, then also the options will bring you to the right answer, which is C. 1 and 3 only. Okay, answer C, 1 and 3 only. Now with coming to our end of the discussion of the cells, based on the ideas which we have already done, we will start talking about the classification. Now the idea of doing this classification is, first from the academic point is that it becomes easier. If we try and put things in groups, it becomes easier for us to study it. The moment we say something is a plant, we will automatically know that this all the cells of this plant's body will have a cell wall which will be made up of cellulose. We can make that generalization even without going and looking into it, right? So if we can have compartments, then it will be easier for us to identify. From our point, for the purpose of the exam, we will not be going into the details of any of these classifications because we don't need to. Why we still need to know them is for their examples. The kind of questions which are being asked, they are just being asked to ask you to identify one particular organism with one category. Okay, and you will read the examples mainly in the environment section. Okay, there you will read different types of organisms, they will be in news. So your job is, whenever you are reading about any organism, any living species, you have to first see to which category it belongs to. Even if that information is not available wherever you are reading it from, say current affairs or anywhere or newspaper, you have to go look that up. That is the most basic premise, and in the last few years, consistently this question is coming. They give you an example, they give you 4 categories and they ask you to select which of these categories does it belong to. Okay, or maybe the other way around. They give you a category, they give you 4 examples and they ask you to correlate. Examples are from current affairs. Okay, they will come. As you develop more and more current affairs, you will have many examples. But basic idea of these categorization that we are going to have here. Okay? So don't get very bothered by their details. Just remember the terms and any examples or the list of examples which you can create under each category. Okay, that is one point to be noted for classification. The first thing which we are doing here is we are dividing all living organisms into 5 categories. This is called the 5 kingdom classification. All the living organisms, we are going to divide them in 5 basic groups. Now again, there are many other types of classification. Different scientists have developed different categorization, but this is the most simplest, easiest and most widely accepted. Okay, so we will talk about these groups. You have the plant, fungus, animal. You've heard these terms. Then you have protista. So in this, your amoeba, paramecium, that group is there. And then you have prokaryotes. This is going to be based on what we have already covered. Let's just note this down systematically. We are not going to be dictating anything here. I'll just mention some points on the board and write some examples. You can copy them as such. You already know all this. We have studied all of this just today. So it will be easy. Just the names we are adding. First is first kingdom. The simplest kingdom is Monera. This has prokaryotes. All the prokaryotic organisms on the planet belong to kingdom Monera. Will they be unicellular or multicellular? Unicellular. So this also we already know. All prokaryotes are always unicellular. Examples. Examples also we have written already of prokaryotes. Bacteria and cyanobacteria. This becomes our first category, the first group. After this, we have next kingdom called Protista. In this now we will have eukaryotic organism, eukaryotes, and eukaryotes which are unicellular. Can you give me an example of this? Amoeba, yes. So, amoeba, euglena, they come under this category of protista. Plasmodium also in this category only. Okay, there is a group name for them. We will also use this term when we come to diseases. Protozoa. So this family is also called protozoa, amoeba, euglena or plasmodium. So they are protista. So eukaryotic unicellular, prokaryotic unicellular. So with this, unicellular organisms are over. All the other three categories, animals, plants and fungi, they would be now eukaryotic. Fungi may we can have some unicellular organisms also. So this is eukaryotic. And we can have both unicellular and multicellular here. Example is yeast. What did we learn about yeast earlier? Anywhere you remember yeast being mentioned? Vitamins. Vitamin B. It is a good source of vitamin Bs. B1, B2. And you know about mushrooms? The common fungus. And of course, the last two kingdoms, plants, eukaryotes, animals also eukaryotes, multicellular, and this also multicellular. The hair, now you can give any examples which you like of plants and animals. See, in the basis of this categorization, when we talk about plants and animals, the distinction was easier for us. We could pick out the point of cell wall and say cell wall not present, cell wall present. But there has been this long standing debate about discussing the position of fungi. They say that fungi also have a cell wall, so why not categorize them with plants only? Right? But ultimately it was established that there is one very fundamental difference in the way plants and fungi, they get their nutrition. And because of which they have been put into different categories. So let's talk a little bit about different modes of nutrition. Which will help us put some more weight into our classification. Mode of nutrition means how different organisms are getting their nutrients. What is the way in which they are getting their nutrients? One mode is autotrophic. Autotrophic means when an organism makes its own food. Yes. Right? Makes own food means like if glucose is the main source of energy, then production of glucose is taking place inside that organism's body. The example of autotrophic nutrition is plants. Plants can take carbon dioxide and water from the environment and make their own glucose. So basically they are making their own food. They are autotrophs. The second category is heterotrophic. Heterotrophic means feeds on others. Here you have the animals. So the animals, what they will do is they will feed on other plants or on other animals. That's how they get their nutrients, right? Your glucose is coming from your food, and that food is coming either from plants or from animals, or even from fungi, right? If you are eating mushrooms. So in that sense, when nutrition is coming from feeding on others, that would be heterotrophic nutrition. And there is a third category also, which is called saprotrophic. This means getting nutrition from dead and decaying matter. And your fungi, they come in this category. When you are getting your nutrients from a dead or decaying matter, then your nutrition becomes saprotrophic. So what will fungi, for example, being saprotrophic, what will they do? They will have something like an enzymes which are supposed to break down your food. So your body, what happens is you take the food inside, then your stomach will produce some enzymes, you will start breaking down food. For the fungi, what they do is they feed on that dead and decaying matter in a way that they release enzymes onto that. Any dead decaying, suppose there is a pile of dead plants on which fungus starts growing. So it will produce enzymes onto that material. With enzymes, those things will start breaking into its component. So maybe there was cellulose, and that cellulose has now broken down into glucose. Once it has been broken down, then the fungus can get nutrition from that. Okay, so this is a very unique kind of mode of nutrition, which distinguishes it from the plants. Okay, it distinguishes it from the plants, and because it is feeding on this dead and decaying matter, it is taking nutrition from dead and decaying matter, it has been placed in a different category and not with plants, because plants are making their own food. Okay, is this aspect clear? Okay, now I'll ask you a little bit of a tricky question. So you might have heard about the vultures feeding on a dead carcass, a dead body, right? Vultures are known for feeding on dead bodies, right? So do you think, okay, tell me, which category should vulture fall into? But I said all animals. When I say animals, birds are also included in this category. Birds will also be in a part of the animal kingdom. So shouldn't vulture be a heterotrophic organism? Okay, they are heterotrophic or saprotrophic. But I'll tell you again the difference in the basic mechanism. There is a term which is detrivorous. Okay, this is a term which is for anybody whose food is dead and decaying matter. For example, earthworm feeds on dead bodies, or like you have the example of vultures. Okay. Now, they are not saprotrophic. Why? Because just like we are taking our food inside the body, they are also doing the same thing. The vulture is going to cut it and eat it. Being saprotrophic means that you are first breaking it down. The fungus, I told you, is putting his enzymes on that dead pile of leaves, digesting it, and it is taking the nutrition inside, not the whole dead material. That is the difference in this mode. Vulture or earthworm or any other detrivorous animal, it is going to eat it just like normal food and then break it down in your body just like everybody else. The stomach, the digestive enzyme, that process remains the same. Okay, so it is going to be heterotrophic mode of nutrition only because the way it is working. Saprotrophic is in a way exclusive to the fungus. They are putting their enzymes on their food and then they are breaking it down and taking only the nutrients which they want. Unlike the detrivores or the animals which are feeding on dead matter. Is this point clear? Right? This is a very important concept when it comes to the environment. Detrivores, their example, their role in nature and threats to vulture, you will read a lot about this, but you should have clarity on these two terms. Okay? We'll go ahead. Decomposers. Okay. Now, what we are supposed to do is, we have to talk about the animal kingdom here. We'll talk about the different categories in the animal kingdom. Different groups, you will come across a lot of different names. But again, I'm telling you the same thing which I told you in the beginning. We don't have to really go into their characteristics. Why is something in a group? Why something is not there in a group? Let's not go into that debate. Because again, if we go, then that is like taxonomy, an entirely different subject which we do not need to drive ourselves crazy with. If I'm telling you turtle is a reptile, please believe me that turtle is a reptile and don't ask me why. Right? Because a lot of these properties are going to be determined at different stages, like how an organism is developing. When it is an embryo, how many layers are there? Which layer is making which body part? How the heart is there? How the legs are there? We don't need to go into that. There is one NCERT chapter in class 7th book which discusses this, but personally I feel we don't need to go into the details of that aspect also, just an overview and examples. Okay, that should be enough. Yes. Venus flytrap. Okay. So, this is one exception when it comes to plants. So, plants, all plants are going to be autotrophic. Whenever we have called something a plant, that means it is making its own food. That is for sure. There are some plants which we call insectivores. Insectivores means they are feeding on insects. Like the example he has given, Venus flytrap. What is Venus flytrap? With the name you can understand, it's trapping flies. Okay, but that in no way means that it's not making its own food. Its problem is, it's growing in a soil which lacks nitrogen. And nitrogen is very important for life. All the proteins are supposed to contain nitrogen. Right? You remember that? Right? So, nitrogen is fundamental for any organism. And plants will get all their nutrients from the soil. So, if nitrogen is missing, this is an adaptation for that. Plants can start trapping and taking in flies, taking in insects, and from that they get their nitrogen. Okay, so we can say that these plants in that sense, they have a heterotrophic mode of nutrition also. Okay, that additional term we can use for them, that they can be heterotrophic also. But this is an additional feature, not the basic feature. Basic ideology of being autotrophs, that would still be there. Okay? Okay. Yeah, pitcher plant, again, same category. So, We'll be doing examples, we'll be writing examples depending on the significance. In that category where we have more examples or more diseases, we'll write more examples. Where it's not very important, maybe just one basic example and the name of the group. Okay, depending on its significance. Any group which has lesser organisms, not very significant, I'm going to leave out also in between. So this is not a technically correct biological classification in that sense, if you want to see. Okay, we are just going to see the important aspects in each of these areas. Okay, so the spellings are going to be very new for you. So all these spellings are there on the slide. You have the slides also. I'm going to be mostly showing you pictures, so you can keep looking up here for the picture and for the spelling. And let's start with the different categories of animals. So we did the first 5 kingdoms, 5 basic kingdom. Now within that we are talking about further categories in the animal kingdom. Okay? Let's start with this first group, which is Porifera. Now Porifera, the picture you can see here is, this organism has a lot of pores. You can see a lot of holes here. So because of this, it gets its name Porifera. The animal with pores. And these are mostly non-mobile. They do not show a lot of movement. Okay, write this down. Porifera are non-mobile animals with pores. Non-mobile animals with pores. Example, sponges. Example, sponges. Next category is called Coelenterata or Cnidaria, and you can see this nice jellyfish here. Most of the organisms in this category, they would be found somewhere in the bottom of the rocks. So write down the name, Coelenterata, Cnidaria. Aquatic organisms mostly found attached to the bottom of the rocks. Mostly found attached to the bottom of the rocks. So we have hydra, jellyfish, and we have corals. I'm sure you've heard about corals. You're going to hear a lot about corals in geography, in environment. Very important. And the animals in corals, they are the Coelenterata or the Cnidaria. Next category we will come to is the worms. The worms are very important for us because we know a lot of diseases which are caused by worms. This first category is a flatworm. If you look at its picture also, you might feel that something has compressed it. It has been pressed upon. It's flat in that sense. So the name for them, of course you have to learn Platyhelminthes also. The common name is flatworms. So their body is like it's pressed from top to bottom, and Here what we find is that this one worm contains male and female parts in the same worm. Like normally we would think of two different organisms. One should be a male, the other should be a female. But in this worm, we have both male and female parts in the same worm. We have a special term for this. It is called hermaphrodite. So hermaphrodite means when the sexes are not separate. Male and female are not separate. Okay, this is a special property of this worm. Write this point. Platyhelminthes or flatworms, they have a flattened body. They have a flattened body from top to bottom. They have a flattened body from top to bottom. The sexes are not separate. The sexes are not separate. And they are thus called hermaphrodites. They are thus called hermaphrodites. Example, you must have heard this, tapeworm. Then you have different types of flukes, liver fluke. Then there is a special worm called Taenia solium, again very important for diseases. We will come to this again when we do diseases in the next class. After this, we have the next category of worms, again very important when it comes to diseases. Aschelminthes or roundworms. You can see its picture also. Its shape is slightly rounded, not flat like the last one. So this is the roundworm. If I'm going to slice it in between, I'll see a circular shape, right? Roundworms, Aschelminthes, or there is another term, nematodes. So whenever UPSC has asked a question, they have used this term, nematodes, for this worm. In these worms, now they are an advancement over the last one. The sexes are separate. Okay. You also have to note this thing, that the way we are writing these animals, we are writing from the most simple to going to the most advanced form, which is mammals, that is you people. Okay. So this is also the way evolution or development of animals took place. This way we are writing, like Porifera was the simplest and the earliest developed animal. From there, we are going into more advanced forms one by one. So this is the sequence which is there. Here now, sexes are separate. Male worm, female worm, separate. Okay. Write down Aschelminthes, roundworms, nematodes. Their body is circular in cross section. Their body is circular in cross section and the sexes are separate. The sexes are separate. Now you can write down the many examples here causing diseases. Ascaris, filarial worm, guinea worm, hookworm. You might have heard some of these names also. They are all roundworms. Next category is called Annelida, and you can see the earthworm here. The property of this group is that their body is in segments. So you can make out these segments also from the picture. Annelida, what you just write down about this is, Annelida are segmented worm. Write this. Annelida are segmented worm. And example is earthworm and leeches. Earthworm and leeches. Next is a category called arthropods or arthropoda. This is now a group which is most abundant. So in the whole of animal kingdom, this is a group which has maximum number of species. Arthropoda group has the maximum number of species, and we are going to divide it into 3 further categories. First is insects. So under insects, there are a lot of examples which you can think of: ants, bees, cockroach, wasps. Any of these you can write down. The common characteristic of arthropod group is that it has a hard external skeleton, or we use the word exoskeleton. So their outer body is very hard, and if you can think of these things, the ants, the cockroaches, they have a very hard material outside. So first you can write down arthropods. They have a hard exoskeleton. They have a hard exoskeleton. And then you can write the different categories. Insects examples. Second, arachnids. Now see, there is a difference in how their bodies are organized, number of legs and all of that, but we are not going into that. Arachnids mein we have spiders, scorpions, ticks, mites. And then one more category we have here, which are your aquatic organisms, crustaceans. So all your seafood comes in this category. We have prawns, crabs, lobster. Let's see some pictures also. So first category of insects, we have these red ants. Then second group, arachnid, we have the spider, and we have a crab here for crustaceans. Next group is mollusca. Now mollusca may, as such, there is a lot of variation in the different organisms. We have a snail here. Other organisms in this group are octopus. Then you have the oyster. Again, if you've seen these organisms, it becomes very difficult to visualize how the snail and octopus are relatives. But internally, their body has some common features. You can just write down mollusks are aquatic organisms. That's the only point you can write. And then write down the examples. Snails, octopus, oysters. Next category, Echinodermata, and we can see a starfish here. Just like when we spoke about arthropod, we said they have a hard external skeleton. Echinodermata organisms, they have an internal skeleton which is made up of calcium. So the word we use for them is endoskeleton. So you can write Echinodermata has a calcified endoskeleton. Echinodermata has a calcified endoskeleton. Examples: starfish. So first point to be noted here, because this is how questions come, starfish is not a fish. Okay, it's a name, starfish, but it's not a fish. We'll come to the categories of fishes also. This is an Echinodermata organism. Then you have sea lily. One more example which you can write. Sea lily. The next category is of the chordates. Our category, the group which we belong to, chordata. So in chordata, there are different simpler organisms, different type of early fishes, but we are not going into that. We are talking about the group called vertebrates, which are organisms which have a backbone. Let's see a little bit about them. So we have chordata. Within that we have vertebrates. And if we talk about vertebrates, the first organism which developed or which evolved or came into being, that is the fish. First we had the fish. Now in fish, you can have examples like sharks, or if you eat fish, then you will have a lot of examples. You can add any of that. Salmon, or things which stay in news like catfish. This is an invasive species, African catfish, always in news. So, as you read more and more, you can keep adding more examples here. The unique examples or the misnomer type examples, they are more likely to be asked. For example, you have a thing like seahorse. Okay, what is a seahorse? A seahorse is a fish, right? And then we have a sea cow, which is a mammal. Okay, we have a sea lion, which is a mammal, right? But seahorse is a fish. So that's how they ask you question. The standard question: seahorse, sea lion, sea cow, which is a fish or which is a mammal, like that. They'll ask you the question. So any such names you find, you need to know the category. After the fish, we had the next group developing, which is amphibians. After fish, we had the amphibians. Here we can have frogs, and salamander. After amphibians, we have coming of reptiles. Now reptiles can be anything from crocodile to tortoise to snake. You can add anything to the list. Lizards. Okay, so I've been asked to slow down. We are almost at the end of the topic actually, so I got that message a little late. After reptiles, we have birds and mammals. The stage of evolution is the same. From reptiles, if we go into the level of advancement, birds and mammals are considered to be at the same stage. Okay, so reptiles ke baad, birds and mammals, we categorize them together. And this is where most of your questions are going to come from. Because these are the organisms which we are most concerned about, which are the ones which are endangered, which are becoming extinct. So this is where the focus of the news is mainly going to be. And that's why you will come across many examples. For birds, you can note down examples like indigenous bird varieties, Great Indian Bustard, we have a national program also to make sure this bird is not going anywhere. Then you can have, you always have some migratory birds in news, like Siberian crane is there. Or any other thing which you find in the news, any bird, you're supposed to know about them. The common birds, you know, crows, sparrows, pelicans. So they are there, and plus anything which is in news. For mammals, so you have some unlikely mammals like dolphins and whales, which we do not expect to be mammals. The basic premise of the distinction between birds and mammals when they developed from reptiles is that birds developed feathers. The external body, they developed feathers. Mammals have hair. Okay, birds have feathers and in place of that, mammals have hair. The word mammal has basically come from the word mammary gland. Mammary gland means the milk glands. Okay, the milk glands which are present, that is what is basically qualifying something to be a mammal. Okay, and of course, the endangered type of mammals which are there, which your government is talking about, you always have to know about them. Pangolin, dugong. Dugong is the sea cow which I was talking about. And of course, all other elephants, tigers, lions, everything is in this category. Okay, so we will do one question from this section. See, the categories which we did today, starting with Porifera, they are the categories of animals. They are given in a way in which evolution took place, starting with Porifera to the most advanced form, Chordata. That's how evolution has taken place. When we came to Chordata, we gave further 5 categories. Under Chordata, we had vertebrates, and within vertebrates, we had 5 categories. So, those were the categories which we wrote. Fishes, amphibians, reptiles, and then birds and mammals. Okay. So you have, for anybody who has missed something, you have the presentation with you. You also have the option of going back to the video and the summary which is available for any portion which you have missed or there is some confusion. So you can look that up. Answer? C. Okay. Yes. जी बोलिए सर, आर यू रेजिंग योर हैंड? आंसर बता रहे थे, अच्छा, ओके, गॉट इट. सी. Okay, online also the answers which are coming are C. Let's see the examples. If you have any of these examples which are new, you should make an effort to write them down. With reference to the evolution of living organisms, which one of the following sequences is correct? So now this is actually a very good question in the sense that they are asking you to identify to which category each organism is belonging and then also determine its sequence. Please remember, this is an absolute classification. ऐसा नहीं है कि something which is a reptile can be a mammal also. और ऐसा नहीं है कि something which is an arthropod can then be an echinodermata also. No. Absolute classification, whatever is in one category is in that definite category also. Because we have done things very superficially, you might sometimes feel कि यार, you know, like you said, hard external skeleton of arthropod, तो वो tortoise को भी होता है, तो can they be like linked? No, it's not like that. There are hundreds things based on which these categories have been developed, identified. We are just taking them very superficially, but that does not mean that things can come in more than one category also. It's not like that. So with that, let's solve the question. Tell me for each of these, octopus, which group? You have to tell me the groups so that I know how you came to the answer C. Mollusca, dolphin. Dolphin is a mammal. Shark is a fish. Okay. Then pangolin, mammal. Tortoise, reptile. Hawk is a bird. Salamander, amphibian. Python, python is a snake, so it will be a reptile. Kangaroo is a mammal. Then frog again is an amphibian. Then you have crabs and prawns. They are arthropoda group. So after we've written the categories, we have to see the sequence, if the sequence of evolution is correct. Mollusk, after mollusk a mammal. This is fine. But after mammal we cannot have a fish. Fish should have come earlier. So incorrect. Second, mammal, reptile. Reptile cannot come after mammal. So yahin pe wrong. Third option which you are saying is correct. Amphibian, after amphibian reptile, and after reptile mammal. Yes, this sequence is correct. Then the last one, amphibian and arthropod. Arthropods came way earlier. So this is absolutely incorrect. The answer is C, amphibian, reptile, mammal, or salamander, python and kangaroo. Okay. I'll tell you some NCERT chapters which you can add with this portion. If you can read them as we are going through the classes, you will find it easier to understand and remember all this. So chapter number 1, it's basically on plants, but it talks about modes of nutrition. So you can read this. Then we have class 8th. In this we have chapter number 8. Then class 9th we have chapter 5. Both of these chapters are on cells. Okay, so they'll cover the content about the cells which you are doing. Maybe you can just read them once and then integrate and not go back to them. And then there is this chapter 7 which is on diversity of life, these different types, variations of that. So if you want, you can look this up. In the next class we are going to start with the diseases portion, very important from the perspective of the exam. We'll do that next time. Yeah. No, we have examples of hermaphrodites outside platyhelminthes also. For example, we have varieties of snails which can be hermaphrodites. Okay, so hermaphrodite is a general term wherever male and female parts are in one particular organism. Sorry? Earthworms can also be hermaphrodites, yes. Right, but platyhelminthes, why we mentioned is because that is special for all the organisms in that group. All flatworms for sure will be hermaphrodites, so that kind of becomes a distinguishing feature for that group, common feature for that group. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, so thank you. We'll meet tomorrow. I think we have a class. Okay.